Hello, and welcome to Cyber in the Spotlight, a series in which Hayes invites cyber leaders from across the globe to discuss the latest trends and challenges that they face in their field. I'm James Walsh. I am the Director for UK and Ireland here at Hayes and the security practice. I'm delighted today to be joined by none other than Niamh Muldoon, who is the CISO at Fenergo, and they're based in Ireland. And I will let her tell a little bit more about herself. But firstly, welcome to the show. And if you could start off, Niamh, by telling us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Delighted to be here, James, and thanks for the invite. So, yeah, I'm Niamh Muldoon. I'm Fenergo's CISO, and what Fenergo do is that we're transforming how organizations do AML, KYC, and transaction monitoring. How exciting is that to be a CISO leading a global security team, enabling the business move forward?
Absolutely. And all SaaS-based, technology-led, revolutionizing KYC for lots of organizations, and an enviable customer and client list if you check them out. So what I wanted to do today is go through some kind of key trends and get your thoughts on a few kind of key areas and key questions for this. Now, elephant in the room has been the case of across the world. It's been a pretty tumultuous time in terms of we've had COVID, we've had an IoT kind of revolution. There's a race for 5G, cloud-centric cybersecurity strategies, and equally, we cannot avoid the fact that there have been recent global conflicts, which have all had huge geo and political elements and economic impacts to various different parts of the world. So my kind of first question for you is, how was all of that impacted, and all those world events impacted and influenced your cyber risk
Great
profile?
question to start off with. From a CISO perspective, it really focuses the mind on understanding your information assets. So your data is your liquid gold. So it's all about how you protect that. And then it's the framework that supports that. So the whole um, trust architecture. What do we mean by that? Trust from a scalability, reliability, and security in your network. Then zero trust around understanding who and what is trying to connect into your environment. And then the data, looking at it from a data perspective, data loss prevention, and from a privacy perspective, ethical use of data. So the strategy is there, whether you move to cloud, IoT, whatever you're looking at it, it's how you protect your data and really understanding that information. So the data, how does it become information? What's needed to keep the business moving forward?
Absolutely. And in terms of those key, the parameters don't change really, whether there's a big geopolitical conflicts or a pandemic. The same principles apply. Would you say that you've had to modify any of your cybersecurity strategy, kind of in hindsight of and in response to certain events at all? Has anything tweaked or changed? I know COVID obviously for a lot now seems a distant past, but it quite isn't. But the work from home element and the rush to get cloud provision, cloud security in place for provision of work. But has anything directly impacted or changed your strategy as a result
It kind of
of changes?
focuses you into looking at it from an enterprise viewpoint from security, your people, your processes, and technology. So, yeah, the technologies would have had to change to be able to enable people to work from home, to do hybrid working. But it's the same risk assessments that you're doing on, you know, the reliability of them having access to the technology services, understanding how they're getting access, how they're getting the authorization, making sure it's only authorized individuals accessing systems and data, and then protecting the data within the systems if you're using cloud and or prem or a hybrid of both. And it's presenting that risk assessment back to leaderships, business teams across the globe who are challenged with delivering quality services, and obviously your board as well, and your key stakeholders.
Yeah. And do you find any key stakeholders have come to you sometimes in a panic situation with a, I've just read this. Obviously, recently we've had some publicised incidents with Uber and things very recently, and larger scale. So, do you ever get that from the board? Are they engaging with you on a regular basis and reactionary
I
to
think
world
as
events?
my job as a CISO is staying abreast of all the various different threats as well as the incidents and breaches that are out there and being prepared to respond to really provide that trust assurance to the key stakeholders on it and giving them up to date risk assessments. And so when you're doing your risk assessment, you're looking at it from the industry that you operate in, the type of data that you hold, the technologies that you use. And so it's constant because cybersecurity is always in the news. So it's again maintaining a single view of your technology assets and being able to manage risk according to those assets.
Absolutely, and in terms of then, if we kind of move slightly on, in terms of we've talked about the
Yeah.
context of world order over the last 2 3 years being very different to what we'd kind of all been used to. In terms of over that time period, let's say 2 to 3 years, what trends have you experienced in relation to cyber and security incidents being reported in the business, and has they directly affected your
Oh,
organisation?
you're going to love me when I say this, but GDPR and privacy regulations have really brought to the forefront the importance of security from a notification perspective, understanding it. And so it's right up there with senior leadership levels, the board, and right through organizations. I guess what's come to the forefront for me is the security consciousness and awareness of data as those privacy regulations change because it impacts every single person. Every single person is a human, there's personal data. So we've all gone through that in our professional and personal lives. And again, what has come to my mind is the difference people now understand a security event, a threat, a vulnerability, a risk, an incident, and dare I say it, a breach, that they are all different and how they respond. To those various different items from a reporting, a management perspective is different. What I love about Fenergo is we are all responsible for information security here. We operate to a security first value and objective. So, through our constant awareness programs, all of our employees maintain that consciousness and awareness. And we do drills to validate that they all know how to respond accordingly.
Very good. Very good. And would you say that there's been a spike in activity because of that awareness? A lot of people 5 years ago, I think, when I was speaking with CISO would say that actually the metrics around reporting and incidents. It should never be used as an ROI or a statement of that the things are improving. But some would point to the fact that more incidents being raised by the business is actually a sign that security awareness is improving. Would you agree with that, or do you think the false positives actually could be more of a time constraint than anything
Awareness
else?
or consciousness, I'd say consciousness is increasing where they reach out to security to have them their support from is it really an event, does it need investigation, but proactively as well. So if they're engaging a new vendor for the cloud, if they're making a change to a business process that stores data, they're reaching out again for input and support.
Good. They're reaching out, and you're very available to the business, I'm sure. Certainly from knowing you. Moving slightly sideways now, because obviously, Hayes, we are in the business of supplying talent and solutions. So, and one of the things that gets banded around in cyber heavily is, a skills shortage
Yeah.
in the marketplace, and one of the things I'm kind of keen to ascertain from yourself is how do you kind of attract and retain cyber security talent, and what challenges have you faced with regards to either acquiring and retaining the skills and the people that you need?
So, James, as you know me too well, I'm going to say I'm all about taking your cybersecurity passion and I'll make it happen. So, yeah, attracting talent is one thing, retaining talent is something different. So, from an attracting perspective, I think uh, if you look at what Fenergo do and what we offer, um, we will continue to attract top talent. Then it's up on me as a CISO on retaining that talent. And it's really understanding where people want to go to with their career and fueling them up with that skill set, expertise, and experience to get there. I think I
Yeah.
would see a lot of people focus on the money and forget about the big picture, um, opportunities wise, what they can get from organizations. For my own personal career, for me, it was the experience, moving from Irish industry to the US. I wanted to get that global leadership experience to bring it back to the Irish market. And I always had my vision on that. And then I looked at key leaders. So Vanessa Pegaros would have been somebody that I would have worked with for over a decade, who really helped me develop from being a security team leader into director roles, leading global teams. And obviously now I've got the great opportunity working directly with Niall Toomey, one of the founders here at Fenergo.
Good. Good. I think some slight technical issues. Hopefully, we can resolve those. In terms of, but I always say to people when, because obviously I get approached a lot around the cyber
Yeah.
talent challenges, but whenever there are challenges, there are also opportunities. Do you see any opportunities in the cyber talent space and skills space on the horizon, or that need to be plugged?
Yeah, again, I think the opportunity is there in relation to the organization that you work for. So again, at Fenergo, what we do is every single person has the opportunity to demonstrate how they deliver to security first through their annual objectives. And I love that. And they also get recognized on a quarterly basis through Mo recognition awards. I think we're very focused on technology. And if you take a step back and look at what information security is all about. It's confidentiality, integrity, availability of data. And so we're all producing data on our in our day-to-day roles. We're all using business processes, we're all communicating. So it's the enterprise approach to information security. So you could be looking at security within business processes, working with people around training, awareness, consciousness, and then technologies. And I think the opportunity there is to think about it from the wider context and not just be focusing on the technology. That's only one third of the program.
Yeah, and we've discussed in the past around the difference between and the requirement to pull in different skill sets.
Yep.
Technology is clearly a key element of cyber, but actually it's the thought processes, it's the business engagement, it's the understanding of processes. It's not necessarily a purely technical discipline, which I think sometimes have been scared to enter to because of that fear that it's all just technical, whereas actually a lot of it, particularly at the senior end, is about leadership and
Yeah.
leadership of people, and as you say, changing the consciousness of of a business and its appetite around risk. In terms of um, one thing that comes up when we see lots of, obviously, and I look at lots of different job descriptions and lots of different requirements out there. Do you have any preference on IT certifications? There are so many now that are branded from various different training organizations, all very reputable. But do you put real credence into security accreditations in your recruitment strategy? Does it sway you, and do you have a preference of certifications?
So I actually have a KPI where that I measure myself, and Niall, my boss, measures me with the leadership team and board to 50% diversity. What do I mean by diversity? It's in skill set, experience, and industry that you work in. I do a lot of work with ISC squared, and I'm a board member of FIT. And I really, what I really love about these programs and these opportunities is they look at it from a technology, business and process professionalism as well perspective. So what do you have to offer the industry? It's not just the technology piece. How can you be an all-rounder from a security perspective, enterprise approach, not just the technology? And career paths, if you look at career paths, they develop you from a technology, business, and professional skill set perspective. And the key in that is risk assessments and being able to make risk-based decisions. Um, and surprisingly enough, if you're just looking at technology, how are you ever really flexing your muscle or your ability around risk-based decisions?
Very good. Yeah, and the articulation of risk and the understanding of cyber risk is probably the most difficult bit to get right. I tend to find. I think technology can be bolted on, and good technologists can help solve some of those problems. But getting a business and individuals to understand risk appropriately often is the biggest challenge, and also sometimes identify that they own it, that they are the actual owner of that risk. Sometimes is the hardest thing to point out. There's lots of talk again around the talent position. Um, we see from Hayes, both in UK and globally, that certain areas are in hot demand at the moment: security engineering in the SecOps space, and cloud security and
Yeah.
architecture. Would you share that mirrors your kind of areas where you feel that the market, and for Fenergo, you've had struggles to obtain and retain talent? And would you reflect that? Do you think that all the reports that both ourselves, the Gartners of the world, etc., that put out there, that those are the three key areas that tend to be the hardest to recruit? Does in recruiting?
I think the markets go through definitely change. It supply and demand varies. From as a CISO, I have a strategy, I have a roadmap, I've got KPIs to deliver, and I have to be flexible around how I deliver them from what's available to me in the market. And so at the moment, I see CISOs are wanted in demand as well as those areas. And I kind of look at what factors you know, have increased the demand. Is it that there's more breaches? Is there more regulations? Like DPOs 2 years ago were wanted in demand. And I really think it's working with the likes of yourselves to understand, what are you seeing really supports me as a CISO and supports other CISOs to make informed decision about what changes they need to make to ensure they continue to deliver, and deliver being protecting their organization's assets.
Good, good. And I think, yeah, the organisation like us will put out a lot out there, and then that's built up from the requirements we see coming in. Definite increase, as you say, in the leadership level, and I think more organisations have been able to acquire investment in cyber more so than they ever have done before. So I think that's driven a wider demand, and that comes about from many reasons. From GDPR had a huge impact, as you mentioned. The DPO, the rise of the DPO, kind of
Yeah.
2-3 years ago, was really sudden and quite immense in terms of their value into the organisation, and how senior that role became, and under legal counsel. In terms of everything we've discussed today, I'd just like to thank you very much for taking part in this. It's the first in the series that we'll be publishing, and there'll be lots from different areas of the globe as well. So, firstly, thank you, Niamh, for taking part. Your final closing bit that kind of leads us nicely into the fact that we are actually conducting across the globe the largest cyber study into talent and cyber risk out there, with my colleagues from different regions across the globe, from Asia, Australia, Americas, Latin America, the rest of EMEA. And we are launching that survey in October. There will be a link in the post of this, and there will be a hyperlink following in the video as well. What we're trying to address here is not just the talent shortages, but also what the problems that CISOs like yourself face. So we're trying to collate from various different CISOs across the globe to give a real clear spectrum of what's happening and where demand is and where people think a big question is where they think it should report, because that's been an ongoing
Yeah.
argument for quite a while. So I'm intrigued to see what regions globally have different views, whether it's CRO, whether it's CIO. We could talk about that all day, but
All day.
all day. But the URL will come up shortly. I'd just like to say once again, thank you very much for taking part, and I've really enjoyed it, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thanks, James.
Thanks a lot.